Hola, Janaína, buenos días.
Ay, buenos días. ¿Vero?
Sí, yo. Aquí voy a
Hola.
prender la cámara. ¿Qué tal?
Hola, guapa. Estoy bien.
Hoy va todo muy bien.
Bueno.
Hello and welcome. We're going to start the panel. So hello and good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to our second day of the Bodies Online Bodies on Live Magdalena Online Festival. So my name is Elizabeth de Roza, and I'm going to be the host for this panel. With me, I have Helen. Helen is our Zoomer, and Carla is our chat bot, chat moderator, and we have our translator, Lauren. So this is our first online Magdalena Festival. And yeah, and the whole idea of this festival is to look at what is this new space and to reconnect all of us. So I'm going to slow down right now because I forgot that I have a translator. So we have Buenos dias, everybody, Bondi, and everything else. So I'm going to slow down. So there is a translator. All right, we have a translator. Her name is Lauren. Can we see Lauren? Where is she? Yeah, and Lauren is somewhere. So Lauren will be translating from English to Spanish, and we have the translation channel itself. So if you need, for all those who need translation, that means from English to Spanish. There is you can go over to where Lauren is. I need to bring Lauren over there right now, right, Jana? Yes. Okay.
Maybe Lauren can translate just to say the.
Yeah. Where is she?
Your sound is not coming, Lauren.
Is she already in the translation channel?
No, she's not.
Not at all.
Oh.
Lauren, we can't hear you.
Yeah, seems your mic is off. Bueno, para que quien necesita la traducción puede elegir el canal en español. Y vamos a ver si Lauren tiene el micrófono.
It's not working?
It's not working. Maybe if you take out your headphone.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Then, si hay algunas personas que necesitan la traducción en español, me pueden elegir a mí en el botón que va a aparecer ahí abajo de la pantalla.
Okay, so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to try, yeah. So, and okay. All right. I have done that. So for those, so Lauren, maybe you can, for those who need translation, please go down onto the below the dialog box of the Zoom frame. It says interpretation, and you can click on to follow the translation simultaneously in Spanish. Yeah, maybe yeah. So Lauren, we're ready to go. So okay, so today, welcome everybody to the second day, the second panel. Our second panel title is Shift in Practice, a Trend or Reality. Today's panel, we have 3 speakers, and today's panel discusses how theater and performance practitioner adapted, shifted, and survived through the pandemic lockdowns. Our first speaker is Lois Weaver, who is an artist, activist, and professor of contemporary performance at Queen Mary University of London. She has been a writer, director, and performer with Peggy and Split Britches since 1980. Her experiments in performance as a means of public engagement include long tables, porch sittings, care cafes, and her facilitating persona, Tammy WhyNot. Lois is a 2014 Guggenheim Fellow and a Wellcome Trust Engagement Fellow for 2016 to 2019. Our second speaker is Shabari Rao. Shabari is an artist, educator, and researcher based in Bangalore, India. Her work focuses on the relationship between body, identity, and power, and takes the shape of performing, directing, teaching, writing, and most recently, experimental film and audio work. More details can be found on Shabari's website, www.shabarirao.com. Our third speaker is Bianca Mastrominico. Bianca is a performance maker, a writer / director, and a pedagogue. She is co-artistic director of Organic Theatre, an international award-winning performance laboratory rooted in ongoing training and research for innovative practice and pedagogy, founded in 2002. Her work is process-led and explorative, interdisciplinary and intercultural, moving across distinct performative forms and modes of performance creation. Bianca lectures in performance devising and theatre laboratory practices at Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh, where she is also an associate member of the Centre of Communication, Cultural and Media. Her current practice research focus is on somatic practices, collaborative creation, and audience participation, both live and on digital. And so today's panel, we have something very exciting. We request all participants to turn on their videos, please. Thank you very much, but just mute yourself, sorry. Yeah. Great. Welcome everybody, and I will now hand this over to Lois. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you to Magdalena for gathering us all here this morning, this afternoon, and this evening. First of all, I'd like to say that Tammy WhyNot sends her apologies. She's in New York with me, and it's far too early in the morning to put on a blonde wig. So she says she would join you at another time. We talked about this panel together, and as it is a panel that's talking about shifting practices, we thought it might be a good idea to start the panel by shifting the practice of what it means to sit in on a panel and to be part of a public discussion. So I'm going to share with you in the beginning a method of conversation that I've been working on called a porch sitting. And to start with, as Elizabeth has requested, we wanted everyone to have their camera on. And I wanted us to start with just looking at each other and taking this opportunity, which often feels awkward or shy when we're on Zoom, to just literally look into each other's spaces, in each other's frames, and just get a look at who's here with us this morning, and just take a couple of seconds to do that. And then I'm going to ask us just to sit as if we were on a porch, to put ourselves in the imagination of a veranda or a lanai or even a stoop, and to recall what it is like to just sit in that space. It might be after dinner, it might be in the afternoon, it might be in the morning, where we're sitting and gazing off into space. And in that gazing, we have the opportunity to wonder. We wonder who's coming down the road. We wonder what the weather might bring. We wonder what might be happening across the way. And we'll sit for a few seconds and let those wonders float through our minds as we gaze out. And after a while, on a porch and in a porch sitting, we might be inclined to speak. We might voice that particular wonder. We might speak even now, even today, even on Zoom, without raising our hand. We just might unmute the mic and say something. We might untangle ourselves if we get into the moment of talking over top of each other without being able to see those signals that we see in a human way when we're talking in person. And we might talk about things without keeping to an agenda. It would simply be a time to sit on the porch in a spirit of reflection and also expression. And if this were a true porch sitting, we would do this for about 1 or 2 hours. And we would sit in some silence for some of the time. We would sit through some awkwardnesses. We would talk. We would talk over each other sometimes. And we would talk again, and we would sit in silence again. And we would do this without an agenda. And doing a porch sitting like this on Zoom, we would have the opportunity to be on Zoom without an agenda. However, we do have an agenda today, and we can't spend these 2 hours sitting on the porch and sharing our thoughts and our wonders and our silences, because we have some amazing practitioners that I, for one, want to hear from, and I know you do too. So we're going to ask you to just sit with us today in the spirit of being on a porch or a veranda or a lanai or a stoop. And we'll return to the porch and maybe, perhaps if we can, bring some of that spirit into the Q&A, where we can be on the porch together and consider some of the things that we've encountered from the practitioners who are speaking today, including myself. And to start, what I'm going to talk about is my own shifts in practice. And as artists, I know that we are shifting all the time. That's part of our job, isn't it? We shift in response to what's happening in our lives and what's happening in the world. And we certainly all shifted as a result of these big global happenings over the past 18 months. And one of the big shifts for me started to happen actually about 20 years ago, when I began to shift not away from, but alongside my performance work into a consideration of spaces, and particularly domestic and familiar spaces, and how they might be used and appropriated to facilitate unfamiliar conversations, how we might use the sense of space and the architectures of space to help us have better public conversations. And of course, one of those spaces is the porch. And the porch for me, and porch sitting for me, began really because I understood the value of that conversation that I've had, those wonderful conversations that I've had sitting side by side with someone. Sitting in a car, I've had my most intense conversations. Sitting on a porch, I've had my most revelatory conversations. So I began to use that as a research methodology when I started to work on a project called What Tammy Needs to Know About Getting Old and Having Sex. And I went into some care homes and into some senior centers, and I wanted to really talk to old people like me and older people than me about what happens as we get older and what happens to our sex drive, what happens to our desire for intimacy and touch. And you don't just walk into a senior center and do that. One of the ways to do that is to go in and sit with people and to sit side by side with people for quite a long time until when and if the conversation begins to shift to those more intimate places. So I began to call that my research method, my intense porch sitting. But then I began to realize that that could be used as something I call a protocol for public conversation. We could use the shape and architecture of the porch and that kind of talking to help us have better conversations. And my colleague, friend Naz Simsek is here, and she's going to put into the chat what a protocol, which is a list of ideas and methods for using porch sitting. And these are open source. So if you'd like to incorporate these into your practice, we are putting them in the chat today so that you can take them away with you. The other space that I've worked with is a cafe. And I've created something called a Care Cafe. And the Care Cafe originated the moment Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. Because I realized then that we all needed to gather. We all needed to come together in a place in the same way that we come together sometimes when there's a tragedy in our community or maybe even a death in our family. We needed that place of gathering. So I created this idea of the Care Cafe, which is very simply a space with some tables and chairs and some things for us to do with our hands at the table, some cutting and pasting and coloring and mending and making. And people came and sat with friends and also with strangers and simply sat and chatted for a discrete period of time, about 2 hours, under the umbrella, under the roof, in the environment of care, where we could talk about the things we cared about, we could talk about our needs for care. And that created this other protocol that I call the Care Cafe. And Naz is going to also put that protocol into the chat. Again, this is something that you can take away with you. You can use it, you can abuse it, you can make it work for you and your community and your practice. And I've created some other protocols as well that I put under the bigger umbrella called public address systems. And those are long tables, which some of you may have participated in already, public studios, situation rooms. These are all things that center around domestic architecture or familiar place that is brought out into the public to help facilitate public conversation. And those can be found on my website under our Split Britches website under the title Public Address System, which Naz will also put into the chat. But of course, those are big shifts that I've been involved in for like the last 20 years. But of course, our biggest shift, the shift that we've all got in common, is that we've shifted online and we've shifted into the Zoom. And so I've managed to shift particularly these two protocols online. And I'm going to just chat for a few minutes about how I've done that, to think about how I've thought about how to make this Zoom space that we inhabit so long in so many hours out of the day a bit more human and soften the edges of the Zoom frame. So one of the ways that I used porch sitting on Zoom is to work with the function of a webinar, and I'm sure you've all been in a webinar, and to bring only 16 people at a time to transfer attendees into panelists so that there's 16 people sitting on the porch at one time. And those 16 people sit for a while on that porch and engage in that kind of free flow conversation while other attendees witness that. And then slowly but surely over a period of time, we shift those attendees out and back to attendees and shift some others in. So there's a free flow of conversation on the porch, but there's also a free coming and going on and off the porch. So that has enabled us to have this conversation facing outwards and to have it in public and to have it without a moderator and without an agenda and still be able to use the function of Zoom. With the Care Cafe, I used the function of the breakout rooms, and we'd come together in a Zoom meeting, very much like we are right now. And I call this Zoom room that we come together, in the first instance, the bar, and then the breakout rooms are the tables, and we all come together in the bar, and then we invite people to go to their table as if in a cafe. And those people arrive in the breakout rooms sitting at that table. Some people know each other, some people don't, and engage in a conversation of care. And I've used this as a care function within a mental health setting, within the setting of a political crisis like Brexit in the UK. But we've also used it as a way to get board members to talk to each other in a little bit more familiar way than they would at a board meeting. So it's a way to use the breakout room, but to familiarize it and make it feel like we're all sitting at a cafe. And sometimes I've used it where I've brought people back to the bar and we've had some performances, and then we break out to the tables again. So it's a functional, it's still functional, even though we're living and working in a Zoom frame. But the other and final thing that I'd like to talk about in terms of my shift in practice is that these are protocols and these are considerations about public conversation that I've made alongside my own performance practice. And that's kept going, and I'm working with my partner, Peggy Shaw, and we've been still making work that faces the challenges of our lives. And we, as all of us have had to do, have moved that work onto the Zoom frame. But what I wanted to talk about is the ways in which I might have transformed that space of the Zoom frame into my own rehearsal space and begun to use the Zoom frame as a rehearsal space, a way to compose and construct the performance that ultimately ended up being something we call a Zoomie, which is a movie of the performance. But we didn't intend that. We intended just to use that Zoom frame as the rehearsal room and as the development room. And I've started to refer to the Zoom phrase as the proscenium arch of the 21st century. And out of that process, we made a film called Last Gasp, Working from Home, which is on demand. It's online on demand. And I've made that available to the Magdalena Festival and to you for this weekend. So it's available online on Vimeo with a password. And Naz is going to put that link to the Vimeo as well as the password. And please have a look. And please let us know if you do have a look and what you think about it. But those are the ways in which I wanted to give a brief overview of how my practice has been shifting and how it's shifted in particular during this time of Zoom and of existing online. And we'll return. I'm finishing up a little early because we're going to return to doing a porch sitting after everyone's done their presentation. So thank you.